Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. My name is Greg Tepper. I have a microphone in front of my face. Another person who has a microphone in front of their face is my co-host for the evening. He's the man they call Josey, Andrew Utz. Yeah, no, you're the one with the microphone in front of your face.
Well, hello, Greg. Yeah, I was looking around to see who else had a microphone in front of their face.
No, it's just you, man.
It's like, just us.
If there was somebody else like with a microphone in front of their face, then like one of us could beg off the podcast for this day. But no, we grind. We're out here grinding. This is the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. We do thank you for spending a little bit of your day with us. Coming up here in just a moment, an electrifying interview with Mason Hall, who will not listen to this. She told me after we got done recording the interview, she told both of us, she was like, I'm not listening to that. And I'm like, why? She did great. It was a great interview.
Yeah. I would say that I would bet the vast majority, I would be interested to know this for real, but I bet the vast majority of interviewees don't listen to their section of their own podcast.
So that's interesting because I only go back and listen to the interviews.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say you only listen to when you're talking on the
I skip past whenever you're talking. I'm like, oh, this is boring. But so it's funny because like I am, and there's probably a leadership lesson here somewhere, but like as somebody who does some broadcasting for a living, whether it's in television form or it's in podcast form, I really do not go back and like watch tape very often anymore. I've done it a couple times when I've done like color commentary on games because I'm still relatively newish to it. But like I have not listened to. We did episode 1739 of our podcast at my big boy job, and I don't think I've listened to an episode in legit like 4 years.
Okay.
Like just keep pumping it out for other people. But what's interesting, what's funny about that? So a friend of mine, and this is a name drop. I'm happy to name drop this. Ted Emmerich is a friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
That is a name drop. Now, Ted Emmerich, for those who don't know, Ted Emmerich is he's a play-by-play guy. His dad, I actually worked with his dad in the infancy of my career, and his dad was a real mentor for me before his passing. Roger Emmerich, the legendary, the Radio Hall of Famer, and you want to talk about somebody you really want to learn from, sit at his feed and just listen to him, he'll spin yarns. But anyway, Ted is his son, and Ted is so wildly talented. He's unbelievable. And if you've ever listened to Ted Emmerich, you've probably heard him call college basketball games or college football games or things like that on ESPN and stuff. He'll also I've worked with him on some high school stuff. But if you hear him, now you've heard Ted, you're familiar with Ted.
I love Ted's voice. He doesn't know who I am.
Ted's voice is unbelievable. It's it's honestly, if I didn't know him and I didn't see his voice coming out of his head, I would be like, oh, that's AI. Like that is that is the platonic ideal of a sports play-by-play voice. It's incredible. And so I asked him when we were at state championships this past December, I was like, Ted, let me ask you a question. Do you hate the sound of your own voice? Because that's what you hear all the time, right? Is everyone hates the sound of their own voice.
Right.
And Ted's response was, and I won't even try a Ted Emmerich impression. It's like, it's okay. And I'm like, okay, that feels like a real like scientific like experiment of like, okay, here's somebody with one of the top 1% of voices in the world.
Right.
Okay. And he's like, my voice is okay. I think we can safely put to bed that everyone hates the sound of their own voice.
Oh, wow. That's a good study. Cosign.
Yeah, like does the guy who does like Let's Get Ready to Rumble, does he hate the sound of his own voice? You know, was it Buffer, Michael Buffer?
And could you ever get like a straight answer out of it? Like, was there some ego associated with there? Like,
Yeah.
no, I love that
Oh,
voice.
I'm sure there's a real interesting deep dive into like identity and be like, oh, like what if you like lost your voice? Like, well, like how would
Mm.
you define yourself? Like, and stuff. Anyway, we won't get into that considering Michael Buffer's not sitting here. Anyway, stay tuned to hear Mason Hall's a wonderful voice here on the podcast coming up here in just a little bit. All right, Josey, it's time to kick this bad boy off, and I've got the big segment.
You got the big boy.
And I wanna be very clear about my intentions with this. Is that I'm trying to get two segments out of one thing. All right. I'm trying to get a value meal out of this.
Okay.
Because I'm reading a book. Reading a book. And right now, I am not at liberty to tell you what book it is or what I think about the book, because that may be another segment for another podcast. But I do want to expound on a story, a parable, something that was in this book that really caught my eye that I think is an interesting kind of case study. And what I want to talk about is the Navy. Now,
the Navy.
the Navy, like
Okay.
like in the Navy,
Like in the Navy.
yes, yeah, specifically, the Navy, and I want to talk about the USS Benfold. Now, the USS Benfold is not to be confused with Ben Folds, formerly of Ben Folds 5, my all-time favorite band. No, the USS Benfold is a guided missile destroyer in the USS Navy fleet. And this was years ago, but it was known as the worst performing ship in the Navy. It was known as just like, and I think we think about, I would love to talk with somebody in the military, because I think like civilians like us, we think about the military as like uniform, and like everywhere you go, like they're the same as another squadron or another unit, or like this ship is just as good as the other ship. No. The USS Benfold had a reputation, and the reputation was it's just not performing well. And the quote that came out was, it was a quote dysfunctional ship with a sullen crew that resented being there and could not wait to get out of the Navy.
Oh, okay.
So that's a sell job on the USS Benfold. And they bring in they had changed a variety of different commanders, and they brought in a gentleman in his mid-30s by the name of Michael Abrashoff. Michael Abrashoff is his name. Abrashooff. And he wrote a great book about this that I'm not reading. This is not the book that I'm talking about, called It's Your Ship, Management Techniques for the Best Damn Ship in the Navy. And he wouldn't write a book, and he certainly wouldn't write a book with that title if he hadn't turned that boat around. And he had turned that ship from one of the worst performing ships in the Navy into one of the very best performing ships in the Navy. And from what I understand, the book is worth your time. However, what is interesting about the way that he did this is that he was able to turn the entire fortune of the ship without changing a single crew member. He didn't fire anybody, didn't kick anybody out. He found a way to change the way that the ship operated. And he talks about whenever he first came on board, they have like a big ceremony for like the outgoing captain leaves and the new captain comes on, right? They roll out the red carpet for reasons you can understand. And apparently, whenever the captain was like relieved of his duties, like officially, there was like a big cheer that went up among the crew members. Like, I want you to think about that. Okay, in the military, where they are basically trained to be like, steady as she goes, there's like a big woohoo whenever this captain leaves. And essentially, one of the things that he did really well was to identify the problems that were going on here, and saying, so there's a quote from here in his "It's Your Ship" book. Our military has spent a lot of time and money preparing for tomorrow's battles with antiquated methods. We continue to invest in the latest technologies and systems, but as we all know, technology is nothing but a facilitator. The people operating the equipment are who give us the fighting edge, and we seem to have lost our way when it comes to helping them grow. And so he started kind of digging in and trying to figure out a way to change the way that the ship operated. And what he ended up finding out was the best thing that he could do was to view the ship through the eyes of the crew. Right?
Okay.
What are the crew going through here? Like, why? Like, they obviously are not having a great time. Mm-hmm. They want to get out of the Navy. What's going on here? And one of the things that he talked about was, especially in the military, he would find out that, in the military, there is a notion of you just don't question your authorities, right? This is your captain, you listen to them, and there's what they call the so-called command and control. Right, command and control, which is the most efficient. They talk about that's the way that those type of linear hierarchies tend to work, which is like they're in command, they're in control, they tell you what to do, you listen to them. That obviously wasn't working the way that he mentioned that they don't, in the Navy, there's a general understanding that they don't want rules to be questioned or challenged, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But one of the things that he worked hard at was convincing his crew that, yes, I do want those rules to be questioned or challenged, because the they is us. There is no they, right? What we want to do is we want to try to knock down those barriers between the command and the crew, right?
Right.
So now that's not to say that, like, look, when it gets to wartime, there still needs to be somebody who says, fire that missile at that area, go do it. There still needs to be that chain of command, but there can be like, you're going to find a way that's the shortest way to short circuit innovation and thought is to just say, you need to do what I say, plain and simple. And and this was in the book that I'm actually reading, one of the ways that he found this out was at lunch, that he would go to the mess hall, and what would happen is that all of the crew members, all the people on the ship would line up to get lunch. And what would happen is that the command would come down and they'd jump the line. They jump the line and they grab their food first, and they go and they eat away from everyone else. They take it up to their offices or whatever, and they'd eat. And that established that divide between the command and the crew. And so literally, he didn't say anything. He didn't do it. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just started standing in the back of the line. And people would come up, crew members would come up and say, Captain, you can go up and get your food. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm back here. And what happened was the next day, more commanders were back there. More people in charge were back there because they're following their leader and saying they're leading by example. And in the end, there's a variety of other things that he did to help turn it around, but he didn't make any sort of like major structural changes to the way that the boat operated. He just changed the culture in a lot of ways. And I was absolutely fascinated by the story of a guy who going in and simply changing the attitudes and changing the way that leaders speak to the people that they're leading can take an organization that was one of the worst performing in their unit and turn into one of the best performing. And I thought that was interesting. So the book that I'm not reading, I'll tell you about the book whenever I finish it because I'm about halfway through. But the book that Michael Abrashoff wrote was It's Your Ship: Management Techniques for the Best Damn Ship in the Navy. So make sure you go check that out. There's my big segment.
That's a good big segment, and I like how there were like you always hear, not always, but how to change your life. Just do one thing different every day. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, that you have changed your life. What one thing can I do? And one thing just as simple as waiting your turn in the lunch line,
right?
Was like the first step, the first domino to fall. That's fascinating.
What can you do? What can you do? What small step can you make today that could change the culture of the organization that you're leading? And obviously, he found some things that worked. So I'll tell you more about I'll tell you more about the book that I'm reading that I read that from, and then I did some more digging on it to turn into a segment whenever I finish it, which hopefully will be soon, about halfway through.
The RYLACast Book Club. Stay tuned.
RYLACast Book Club. I want to invite you to go to our website, RYLA5810.org. Camp's coming up.
Camp is coming up.
Do you know camp, like, if you want to get down to it, camp's like 3 months from right now.
What if I don't want to get down to it, Greg? What if I'm
you and I have
at the barrel of March?
Yeah, you and I have we have a call on Monday? There's like a planning meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to all of our listeners, planning has been happening.
To be clear,
3 months before the start of camp.
This is like another planning meeting coming up on Monday. Camp is rolling, baby. It is is coming. Like, applications are out. We mentioned last podcast that we did RYLA Roundup. Like, we are humming along towards the last week in May, and so go to RYLA5810.org for all the information there. So make sure you check that out. And now, speaking of somebody who I guess we didn't ask her if she's going to be at camp this year. I presume she applied. This feels knowable.
This does feel knowable, and of course we do know it,
but we can't say. All that's to say. I hope you guys enjoy this scintillating interview with Mason Hall. Here's our conversation with Mason Hall here on the RYLAcast. Oh, Josey.
Oh, Greg.
We book a guest every time we do the podcast, but few guests have been as nosy about the process of recording this podcast as our guest this week. Would you say that's true?
I would say that's very true. Yes.
We're pleased to be joined by making apparently her podcast debut, our friend Mason Hall. Hi, Mason.
Hi, Greg. Hi, Josey.
Hello.
So this can't help but be a little curious.
You told me in confidence before we came on that this was your first podcast experience, and you were asking about how we were doing the whole thing. But you're good, right? Like, just to be clear, you're good.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Okay.
I just wanted to know what I was in for.
Okay. Well, this is a 90-minute Mason Hall tell-all. That's what this
Mason's
is.
Never going to tell you anything in confidence again.
Yeah.
No.
So just like start at the beginning.
It had to be done.
The start of the beginning. Let's just go year by year and really let it breathe. Like, if you want to spend 3 hours on your third year of life, like, please, by all means, go.
So the origin of
I was
Hall.
born.
Okay, Mason. First of all, where are you broadcasting to us from?
My apartment in College Station. I go to Texas A&M. Well, whether you like it or not.
This is an audio medium, but it's an audio medium. But Josey and I are both doing the thumbs up. We're both gigging them.
Okay, good. I'm glad I have y'all support. Yeah. So I'm here in my little bedroom. I had class and work today and podcast at night.
How are things in College Station?
Rowdy. They're fun.
Okay.
It's fun. I like this school. Yeah. Yeah, I had
Rowdy.
a class this morning, and then I work at a elementary school, so
Mhm.
I had some work after that as well.
We'll
So
certainly get
long
to
day,
that.
but
We'll
good
s-
day.
we'll
Okay.
certainly get to that. The way we like to start our interviews and our conversations with our guests, and we certainly do appreciate your time. Can you tell us a little bit about your RYLA story?
Yes. So I first heard of RYLA my early my junior year in high school. My English teacher played us the iconic promotional video, and I just remember thinking, that looks so fun. I want to go to that so bad, but it's a leadership camp. Oh, you have to apply. Oh, I'm having instant doubts. I do not think I'm going to be able to do it. And I honestly, it went to the back of my brain. Then, probably early January the next semester, my high school counselor hunted me down and she said, Mason, are you applying to this camp? Miss Hughes, I don't have a good feeling about that. I don't know. I'm nervous. I don't want to put myself out there, all of that. And she said, well, that is too bad because I already wrote your name down. And okay, cool. We're doing this. So I send in my application and then I go to my interview, and there are people there, business attire. They have their resumes and a portfolio. I have my resume on a single piece of paper, and I'm going to give this my all. We'll see where it goes. And I end up getting the call that I got in. Okay, now I'm even more nervous because, as previously mentioned, I don't know what to expect, and I do not do good with uncertainty. And even going to the informationals, Dana is not going to give me the hour by hour breakdown I want because he does want to leave some surprises. So I was so nervous, and it really wasn't until my buddy Joseph, who he was an alternate, and he got the call that he was able to go. So I was excited. At least I have a buddy to go with. But I'm finally at this camp, and of course you get pulled out of the cars and you're running. I think I blacked that out. I don't enjoy doing either of those things. So I was like, what is this? I get into my chili pepper themed cabin, and I see this gorgeous blonde, blue-eyed woman approach me, Miss Joni Utz, and she is basically telling me the rundown. Here's where to put my bags, and other than that, it is complete silence. And it was awkward, and it was the idea of the only way conversation is going to happen is if I initiate it, and that was my first tell all of what this camp is about to be. I am not good at stepping up or putting myself out there. And I think that's a lot of what RYLA taught me was if you want something to happen, you have to take that initiative. And that was a big learning experience. But yeah, just learning how to deal with different leadership types. Of course, you have like the koalas, the owls, and that was my first realization of I'm going to be working with different personalities to accomplish a goal. And that was really cool to see. And I feel like I still use that daily. But I'll get into that later. And then after camp, I applied for advisory. We did that for a bit, and then COVID hit. So I was on RYLA. I worked with Josey. I was his AC in RYLA. And it's been that ever since.
The jump, I can only imagine, from counselor Joni to RYLA. Let's see, bowling alley bumpers Josey was shocking, to say the least.
I was honored I got to work with both the Utts.
Yeah. That's a rare superfecta
Yeah.
there to go from one Utz to the other. Joni won't talk to me, so this is really good for you. Well done to you, Mason.
So Mason, what do you do today? Like abroad today. Like what are you doing? What are you doing in College Station?
So I am studying early childhood education, which is about pre-K to sixth grade. I am currently in my first semester of student teaching. So that looks like 1 day a week. I'm in the classroom from my contract hours are 7 to 3:30 p.m. And I follow my mentor teacher blindly. Whatever she does, if she has a meeting after school, if we have a half day, I'll still have to stay. Everything she does, I do as well. And then I work at a different elementary school, and it's like a part-time teacher's aide. So I'll go from class to class, I'll pull kids, and if they have homework they need to do, if they are learning a new project or a new concept, I'll help them review that. Or honestly, sometimes they just need to be pulled out and need a little bit of attention and love. So it's constant. Every day looks different, but I love it.
And how would you say RYLA, you use RYLA in your day to day? And if so, how?
Yes. So earlier I was mentioning different personality types and how you're constantly going to be working with people who may not think like you or may not see the same path to accomplish the goal as you. I remember round robins. That's when you really start to get that idea of we all have different ideas, but we're here to accomplish one goal. I see that with my students because, especially when I'm working, I'm getting every hour a different student who is learning a new concept, a different grade than the last student I worked with, different home life, different behaviors. And it's that adaptability that I constantly have to readjust myself. If the last kid really frustrated me, I have to take a breath. I have to pull it together because this next kid has nothing to do with that. So that constant check. But also, when I'm with these kids, I'm there to help them accomplish whatever goal is needed to be done. So if I'm teaching them a new concept, but maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe that's academically, or maybe that's an emotional thing. So I have to check myself there and say, okay, do I really need to sit down with them and go over this over and over, or do I need to see how they are? Because sometimes I feel like all a kid needs is just to be seen. And I think we see that a lot at RYLA as well, because a lot of these students, you see all these leadership abilities, but they don't see that in themselves, and they learn that week. And I think that's really important. I know for me, sorry, I'm not letting you speak at all. But
this is we talked about this as a Mason Hall tell-on. People hear from us all the time. You're the star of the show here. Do not feel bad.
Okay. Okay, thank you. But it's the idea of having someone see the leadership qualities in you that you may not have seen in yourself. Because for me, when I was applying or even thinking about it, it was so much self-doubt. I cannot do this. That imposter syndrome, even when y'all ask me to do this, I'm like, why would they want to hear from me? But reflecting, there were so many people along the way who saw something in me and the idea that I could do something greater. And if I think I'm like, I saw that in high school. What if I saw that in elementary? So that's been something that I've been really working on with my kids. And, what if sometimes they don't need to review what 2 + 2 is. Sometimes they just need a confidence booster, or, what can I do to help you accomplish this goal? Stuff like that. So yeah, that constant adaptability is something I use a lot.
People can't, again, this is an audio medium, but people can't see me doing a lot of nodding into the microphone.
Yes.
I'm the husband of an elementary school teacher, so girl, I get it. I've heard all of these things. Do you know, this is for my own edification, do you know like what you want to teach, or is it just like dealer's choice?
I don't know. I'm studying the degree of early childhood, but I don't see that I'm getting an early, like a degree in a teacher certification. I eventually want to teach everything, because if I want to do research or be a professor or something, I want to have a good concept of what I'm talking about. But also I don't know what I like. I know I don't want to do kindergarten or first grade. I know I don't want to do that. But as far as like older kids, I feel I'm way too young now to do high school. I feel like I have not much wisdom to offer high schoolers. So that will be something down the line. But like elementary, middle school, intermediate, I think that would be fun.
You
for right now.
you got more wisdom than you give yourself credit for. But
Thanks.
I will say this though. Like I think it's really interesting, and I love talking. I think okay. I want to be very clear because I'm going to offend some people if I'm not clear about this. I love every class of Rylarian. I want to be very clear. I think 2019 Rylarians had maybe the most unique experience in the sense of especially the ones who went to physical camp and then did RYLA as ACs. And what's so fascinating to me is that I think there's an easy off-ramp for you. It's just like a glowing giant sign like, why would you deal with this? So my question for you is, why do you deal with this? Like, what keeps you engaged? Why are you still, involved in RYLA and in the program? What keeps you coming back?
I think it's the difference of the faces of the students or the campers when they leave the camp and then when they come. When they come, they are a complete shell of themselves. And then by the end, you slowly, even though I'm not in a cabin, I'm more staff. I like to watch from the back and observe. But you can see those relationships forming and that confidence building. Confidence is everything. And to see them being pushed out of their limits and to grow within themselves is really powerful. And I love it. And I love seeing what they do with that too.
Like what Greg was saying, I think it's fascinating. I think it's great that you're still here, because like you don't know what you don't know. So from Greg's and my perspective, that 2019 year, you went through like essentially 3 new RYLA programs in the span of 3 years, from traditional camp, RYLA, which was put together like as
a great success. Everyone remembers that fondly, and everyone loved it. What a win for RYLA.
Mm-hmm.
It was a great success. Thank you, Greg. But I'm like you're watching how the sausage is made real time and putting something in front of these students, and we're relying on ACs in the traditional AC role, but the AC role is, and I'm peeling back the curtain here, the AC role works because ACs were just in the camper shoes the previous year, but everybody was new in RYLA. I don't know. I just think there's no question there. There's just kudos to you, Mason.
Thank you. Well, it was nice. I was excited for RYLA, and I was in an AC position, so that was exciting to have a little bit of responsibility. I was working with a great counselor.
Oh,
and
you're so flattering.
Thank you. What I was lucky with is usually when you're an AC, you have that gap year, and then the next year you can come back. My gap year was RYLA. So for every opportunity I had to go to camp, I could go. I was also like a 20-year-old being an ACA, which I thought was funny. No one will have that experience, so.
That's true. So now comes the time. Sorry, as you can see, we are a well-oiled machine here, and I'm looking for visual cues from my
68
co-host.
episodes in, just can't. We're nailing it.
Y'all are doing great.
Now comes the time, and as you know, as an avid listener, like, rate, and subscribe us on your podcast vendor of choice, everyone. As an avid listener, now comes the time in our program where we ask our guests to plug something, book, podcast, audiobook, elementary school, things like that, college, eatery.
That'd be good.
The floor is yours.
Okay, give me 1 second to think. You're going to have to cut this out.
I'm not editing it. I want to be very clear. Josey's asked me multiple times to edit something out of the podcast, and our listeners have heard every single one of them. So this is not going to cut out.
Yeah, so you can keep thinking and then just butt in. Um, yeah,
This
in the
is
spirit.
so. Oh, I'm sorry. This is
No, go
just
for it.
random, but it was probably the latest thing that I listened to and have been thinking about. It was Neil deGrasse Tyson
Hmm.
on the what's his name? Joe Rogan podcast. I think that was the last thing I listened to, and it's the only thing coming to mind. But okay, how I will wrap this in is he is big on the idea of the aspect of education and how important it is to keep learning. You don't just stop learning when you're in college. That's the point that's been sticking out with me. It's, when I imagine myself graduating, I don't want to learn anything else. I'm full of knowledge. I'm good to go. But he changed that for me. It's why I stopped there. There are so many aspects about life and society and the universe that it is fun to be a little curious. So
I
I
agree.
would plug that if I could. It's really fun.
That's great.
It'll make you
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mason. One last thing before we go. I think we would be remiss as people who understand you and your role within RYLA. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention a very someone special in your life. Let's talk about your cat.
Oh, Mr. Zayn Malik, full legal name.
Yeah. So full legal name is Mr. Zayn Malik.
Yes. He was.
Just tell me everything about him.
So, Zayn Malik, he is 11 years old. He was my sister's cat originally. We had the litter of his brothers and sisters who we bottle fed and then took in. And she said, I have just the name for him, Zayn Malik. And I was always a Liam girl, so I wasn't really fond of his name. But she ended up going to college and leaving him with me. Now he is in my apartment. Greg, Josey, I'm not going to pay $400 pet deposit.
Certainly.
What I am going to do is get him certified with the Emotional Service Animals of the United States for $75. And he is going to be with me by law. So I can fly with him. I can go into public areas with him. I can get him a vest if I wanted to. He said, I have an ID card that I carry around in my wallet. Granted, I do use him emotionally. He is very good at supporting me emotionally. But
so he, I mean, yeah, to be clear, like to the authorities listening, like this isn't a scam. This is like he is a legit emotional support cat for you.
Yes, not to be confused with a service animal. He's just emotionally serviced. Yes. Yes. So yeah, I have a note for him that I have to give places, but yeah, full legal name. He's binded with me by law.
Okay.
Thank you. And I know the actual band member would be proud as well.
Yes. Shout out to Zayn Malik, a person.
Zayn Malik, if you're listening.
Yes. Yeah. A message to Zayn Malik. Here we go.
Oh no! If you're listening, just know that.
Yeah.
Those who are inspired of you are taking care of animals whose names are also inspired by you.
Absolutely. And of course, we all knew, both Josey and I, both very young people, very young, very hip. We both knew that Zayn Malik was a member of One Direction, a British, an English-Irish pop boy band formed in London in 2010. The group is anyway.
Yeah, Zayn Javad Malik, known professionally as Zayn Malik. We knew that.
Knew that from the word go. Mason Hall, thank you for your time. Thank you for being our guest on the RYLACast this week.
Thank y'all so much for having me. This was such a pleasant experience.
There she is, Mason Hall. Her first podcast, you wouldn't know it. Crushed it. I do think I'll tell on her. We got done doing the interview and she said, "Boy, I hope you guys got to talk a little bit. Like, feel like you got to talk." And both of us were like, "Listen, Mason, you are a welcome oasis in the desert of
Yes.
Josey and Tepper talking on this podcast. I promise.
So I know this part is going to get cut out, but do you think Mason tells that to all the podcasts she's on? Oh, it's my
Yeah.
first one.
Oh, it's my first one. I don't know what I'm doing. Oh, here's just a fabulous story about all the things I've got going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've been had. I'm confident that we've been had. We appreciate Mason Hall joining us from Aggie Land down there in College Station. Now, CSTAT, Bryan College Station, BCS. I'm going to be there in the end of June.
Is that the annual? Aren't you in that area annually?
Yeah, State 707. Do you know that I will spend my birthday driving to College Station?
I did not know that.
What a treat.
I'm sorry, or
I don't mind it. It'll be fun. He said unconvincingly.
Did you know? Okay, let me ask you a question. Would you rather drive to College Station or take a train?
You know the answer to that.
That gets you there in 45 minutes.
I'm pro train. I'm pro train. I'm especially pro high speed rail. Let's make it happen, folks.
Let's make it happen. You heard it here first.
Let's go to Andrew Josey to bring us home with what at some point had a segment that had a name that was 60 episodes ago. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. We will get to your segment here in a moment.
I was like, oh,
do you see the pictures that we're redoing our studio at my big boy job?
I did. Yes.
That's where the podcast was born.
I know. I was a little. There were some tears being shed, and then I thought about making that social media public, and then thought, what if we were kind of moonlighting?
I had, boy, that was now. Whenever we started this podcast.
Oh my gosh, 2018.
I'm fairly certain I let my boss know we were doing it. My boss is, I will say this for my boss. He's always been very supportive about my involvement with RYLA, taking a week off of work and just say, hey, dude, like deuces. But he's always been very supportive. So I'm fairly certain he knew. But if not, thanks, Adam.
I'm fairly certain he knew as well, because I was never really asked what I was doing there as I was wandering the halls of Dave Campbell's.
Yeah.
But thanks for that. Thanks for can't wait to get into the new space.
Yeah, now you can get into the new space. Let's go to Andrew Josey with our final segment. Go, Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yeah, thanks for vamping.
Elegant as always.
So I'm trying something different in life, not like in this segment. Like this segment I think works as is. They at work I have some supervisees, which just feels weird to like say. And I'm gonna start with start doing a weekly kind of things I think. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, to kind of just get the creative juices flowing. Maybe empower us all to think a little deeper about how to solve the world's problems, one step at a time. And so I stumbled upon a Substack called Fearless Culture by Gustavo Rossetti, which is definitely how you pronounce his name. And Gustavo describes himself as a workplace culture designer, and best-selling author of Remote, Not Distant, a book about this new hybrid world we're living in, published in 2022. I have not read it yet, but that would be pretty funny if that was the book you're reading. And
it's not.
Okay. Well, one topic I found out, he wrote an article called Disagree and Commit, a 5-step playbook to make faster, smarter decisions. And it's an article he wrote back in August. And I think we touched on it in a previous podcast episode, because the concept sounds familiar. And it's this idea of how to get rid of groupthink. And Jeff Bezos has incorporated this disagree and commit process. And it all stems from someone at GM excuse me, where who they were trying to make a decision, and he said, kind of open it up to the group, and there were no dissenting opinions. And he said, let's postpone further discussion of this matter until our next meeting. It'll give us time to develop disagreement and perhaps gain a better understanding of what this decision is about. And I think that's a really cool idea that, as someone who could use less meetings in their life, sometimes I find myself in meetings saying, okay, let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. But silence, it needs to be challenged at times, especially when you're trying to work in this collaborative, this atmosphere. And sorry, did you have something?
No, I was just going to say
you
that
were.
It seems like if you put out an idea in a group and it has like unanimous support, I know that like sounds great, but then you think about it for more than 2 seconds, you're like, oh, that's not good. No.
Right.
Like, what are we all doing here if we all think that this is a good idea?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this idea of disagree and commit is a 5-step process that's built upon challenging whoever's idea they put forward. And so you propose is the first step, present the problem or solution, and team members can ask clarifying questions, and then disagree. Immediately debate the problem or the solution. And these disagreements can't just be like, I hate Greg's idea because I don't like Greg. It has to be supported by evidence, data, or examples. And then you go to a decision, and the team makes or ratifies a decision using various methods. And then you commit. And this commit piece is very critical, because regardless of the initial stance, everybody on the team has to commit to successfully executing the decision. And then you implement, and the team works together on implementation, monitors roadblocks, yada, yada, yada. But it's this disagree and commit that I find really fascinating about, hey, I don't think your idea is as good as everybody thinks it is for these reasons. But if this is the idea we're moving forward with, I am all in. And that I think is just a really neat tool. If somebody's trying to change workplace culture or just get a little more collaboration in their meetings, this disagree and commit process would probably be a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay. Disagree and commit.
Disagree and commit.
Okay. As well. Okay. And Gustavo
Rossetti. Yeah. Gustavo Fring. Rewatching Better Call Saul. So very familiar with Gustavo Fring. Gustavo Rossetti. And it's been implemented by Jeff Bezos over at Amazon. So I think there's several articles if you just look up disagree and commit.
Disagree and commit. That's a good way to go about things. And yeah, like I said, there's nothing scarier than like as somebody who will run meetings from time to time, of when like I'll say, I think we should do this, and then like everyone in the room is like, and just nods. I'm like, okay. Like best case scenario, you're not listening.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a good way to go about things. Thanks, Josey.
Thanks, Greg. You're welcome.
Okay, so RYLA5810.org. Follow us on social. And yeah, is there anything else we need to tell people about, like the nuts and bolts? We planned this. This is a produced podcast.
I think so. We have the everyone. We've received all the staff and support staff applications. But if you are, this is a call to action. If you are a Rotary Club, get to interviewing those kids.
Yes. We're going to need those students.
Yes. If you're a student and you're like, I have got to see what's going on here in this podcast and like for the real deal, those applications are out as well.
Bingo, bango.
So check our social media feeds for more information on those. Talk to your high school guidance counselor or your local Rotary Club.
Yes. Go talk to your local Rotary Club. Just go ahead. Just go check in. Like, hey guys, what's up?
Yeah.
What you guys got going on? They'll guide you the way.
Rotary clubs give scholarships too.
Yeah.
Just if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah. Let's be smart here, guys. Let's think this through. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us. Please go and rate and subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to this, and leave a comment, and tell a friend about this podcast. And here with an antiquated way of telling a friend about the podcast is Josey.
Well, thanks, Craig. Yes, go to I mean, you don't have to go to wherever you are. Write a message, listen to the RYLACast in some, chalk, maybe some sticks, maybe like a SOS smoke fire, wherever you are. Maybe you're in the wilderness, maybe you're at your street. And then when you leave, this is the really key part in the antiquated way. When you leave, do a little Hansel and Gretel situation and leave breadcrumbs from that spot so that whoever comes back and finds those breadcrumbs will eventually listen to the RYLACast messaging, and then they'll listen to the RYLACast.
Really smart. Really smart. Get some panko. Thanks for doing it for us. Josey, thanks for your courage.
Thanks, Craig.
Talk to you next time on the RYLACast.